Good morning, happy holidays, and welcome to EduBoss, where you will find tips for teachers and help for your students. I'm Shells, and as you can see, something's missing. That would be Suze. She is off to New Zealand with the stitches still in her neck, but she is not one to give up easily, and I hope she's having a wonderful time because she's had a very busy term. I decided today to do the introduction in my yard because I've got these beautiful calendulas which are totally being decimated by worms, but that's another story. If you hear the birds, sorry if they're distracting, and I'm kind of hoping that the roadworks don't get too noisy up there. So in the first couple of days of the holidays, of our holidays, I've been thinking, because my students will be starting their first internal final assessment next term. So my thought is, they're doing a student experiment. I know that I can teach them the skills. The higher order thinking has to be done by themselves. The assignment has to be done by the students. But if they've got the skills and they've got the confidence to apply those skills to each section of the assignment, they can get the highest possible grade, which will give them the confidence to go into their exam knowing that they can do it, number one. And I think that that's really, really important, because if you know that you can do it, you just try so much harder and you don't panic. Besides knowing that they can do it, they will also get the highest possible grade that they can, which means if they do poorly or averagely on their external exam, when it's all averaged out, they'll be okay. And I guess what I'm trying to do is to bulletproof them as best I can, because they're great students and I want to help them, bottom line. So my students will be completing a student experiment, and I know that I've done some videos on the student experiment, but I feel that I need to just go back one step. So if you are a student, particularly if you're one of my students, I would suggest that this video would come in between the introduction to student experiments and the next video on student experiments. So what I've found is students often try and take a shortcut with their assignments, and they begin the assignment without fully understanding exactly where they want to go. So there is planning for the assignment, and often quite good planning, but not right from the start. I think you need to start by completely understanding the student experiment that you've chosen to base your experiment on. I'm going to use one from one of our Year 10 assessments, which should be fine because they've completed that assessment now, where the students looked at the effect of surface area on the rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction. But when I marked the assessments, I could see that a lot of them didn't fully understand how enzymes work or the concept of surface area. So they hadn't fully understood the class prac before tackling their student experiment and altering the class prac. So that's step number one. As soon as you have chosen your prac, actually, let's take it back one step. Before you choose your prac to base your student experiment on, you need to carefully look at all the options. So in the past, we haven't really given you very many options, but for your internal assessment, we give you 3 options, maybe 4, you might even have more. You need to carefully consider each option as a student. So step number 1 is to go back and find all the class pracs that you did and make sure that you understand the theory behind each one before you choose which prac to alter. just a reminder, we compared two sites at Emerald Lakes, looking at the macroinvertebrates, working out Simpson's diversity index, and looking at the abiotic factors. So these two sites were spatially different, and we compared them looking at those factors. We have also had a look at a limiting factor in an ecosystem. In this case it was light intensity, and we measured the effect of light intensity on photosynthetic rates in algal balls. We're still going to be completing early in term 4 a little prac where we will be using hemocytometers to do counts on cells, yeast cells in this case. We're going to be looking at factors that affect a population growth, because we're going to be studying population. So those are your choices. You could compare two sites based on macroinvertebrates. You could look at something that affects the rate of photosynthesis using algal balls, or you could look at factors that affect the growth of yeast cells. Choose a prac that you've completed in class where you have a really good understanding of the theoretical components and you actually have an interest in the topic. You might not have an interest in any of the topics, but the one that you have the most interest in, choose that prac to alter. Don't worry so much about how you can alter it or how difficult it was to accomplish in the lab. Because if you understand the theory, you'll feel more comfortable with your rationale, you'll feel more comfortable with developing a research question that you fully understand before you start your investigation, and you'll feel more comfortable discussing the results. They will be more meaningful, and you'll be less inclined to draw conclusions that are invalid, and that's really important, as you know. So that's step number 1. Choose a prac that you are interested in and that you know the theory for. You understand every aspect. Clear up all those questions. Your theoretical knowledge of the topic needs to be rock solid.